The first light of dawn had barely touched the horizon when Lily Forrester stood on her porch with her 3-month-old daughter cradled against her chest, watching as the town council of Shafter, Texas approached her small homestead. The year was 1877, and in the 3 years since she'd moved to this dusty corner of West Texas, she'd never seen such grim determination on the faces of these men. "Miss Forrester," Mayor Thornton called out, his voice carrying across her yard. "The town council has reached a decision regarding your situation." Lily felt her heart sink. Ever since her belly had begun to show 6 months ago, the whispers had started, the stares, the sudden silences when she entered Henderson's general store. She'd hoped that after the birth things might settle down, but they hadn't. If anything, the presence of little Emma had only made the scandal more concrete, more impossible to ignore. "I believe I know what you've come to say," Lily replied, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. She held her daughter closer, as if her thin arms could shield the infant from the judgment being passed upon them both. "Then you understand why we must ask you to leave Shafter," Thornton continued. "We're a God-fearing community, Miss Forrester, having a woman of questionable virtue raising a child born out of wedlock sends the wrong message to our young people." "Behind him, Mrs." Whitley nodded vigorously, her thin lips pressed into a line of righteous indignation. She'd been the most vocal about Lily's sinful ways at the church socials. "I've done nothing to harm anyone in this town," Lily said, her voice catching. "I've worked hard, paid my debts, and minded my own affairs." "It ain't about harm," Councilman Bridges interjected. "It's about decency, about standards." He shifted uncomfortably, unable to look directly at the baby in her arms. The council's vote was unanimous. "You have until sunset tomorrow to collect your belongings and move on." Lily felt the blood drain from her face. "Where am I supposed to go? Everything I have is here." "That ain't the town's concern," Mayor Thornton replied, his voice softening slightly. At least he had the decency to look uncomfortable with his own decree. "Perhaps you have family elsewhere who might take you in." Lily nearly laughed at the suggestion. Family. Her father had disowned her the moment she'd refused to marry the widower he'd selected for her, a man 40 years her senior with a violent temper. Her mother had died years ago. There was no family to return to. "I'll figure something out," she said coldly, unwilling to give them the satisfaction of seeing her beg. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to feed my daughter." The council members departed with mumbled goodbyes, none looking her in the eye. Lily closed her door and sank to the floor, finally allowing the tears to come. Emma stirred against her chest, making soft cooing sounds that usually brought joy to Lily's heart. Now they only intensified her despair. What would become of them? As the sun began to set the following day, Lily had packed what little she could carry. Her home, the small but sturdy cabin she'd saved for years to build, would be forfeited to the town. She had managed to sell a few pieces of furniture to Mrs. Henderson at the general store, who at least had the kindness to give her a fair price, if not a sympathetic word. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the nearly empty room when a knock at the door startled her. Emma was sleeping in a basket nearby, and Lily quickly checked to make sure the sound hadn't disturbed her before answering. Standing on her porch was Yates Hawkins, his hat in his hands and an uncertain expression on his sun-weathered face. Yates was known throughout the region as one of the finest horsemen in West Texas. He worked primarily as a guide and sometimes as a hired gun, though Lily had never known him to be unnecessarily violent. They'd spoken only a handful of times when he'd come through Shafter, but he'd always been polite to her even after her condition became apparent. "Evening, Miss Forrester," he said, his voice low and gravelly from years of riding in dusty conditions. "Heard about the council's decision." Lily stiffened. "Have you come to gloat, Mr. Hawkins?" He looked genuinely surprised by the suggestion. "No, madam, I've come to offer my assistance." Lily regarded him suspiciously. Yates Hawkins had to be at least 30, maybe older. His dark hair was streaked with premature gray at the temples, and there were deep lines around his eyes from years squinting against the sun. He was tall and lean, with broad shoulders and calloused hands that spoke of hard work. Not an unattractive man by any measure, but Lily had learned the hard way not to trust men's offers of assistance. What sort of assistance? I'm heading north to Colorado territory. There's a settlement there, Hope Valley. It's different from places like Shafter. More open-minded, you might say. I could escort you and your little one safely there if you've nowhere else to go. And what would you want in return, Mr. Hawkins? Lily asked bluntly. A flash of something hurt perhaps crossed his face. Nothing, Miss Forrester. Contrary to what some in this town might believe, there are still men with a sense of decency. Lily studied his face, looking for any sign of deception. Finding none, she sighed. I apologize for my suspicion. These past months have been difficult. No need for apologies. Your caution is warranted. He glanced behind her toward where Emma lay sleeping. How old is she now? 3 months, Lily answered, surprised by his interest. Most men in town pretended Emma didn't exist, as if ignoring her would somehow make the scandal disappear. Yates nodded. My sister had a baby last year. Tough journey, but children are resilient. If you decide to accept my offer, I can have a wagon ready by morning. We would need to travel light, and it won't be an easy journey, but I give you my word I'll see you both safely to Hope Valley. Lily hesitated. The idea of traveling alone with a man she barely knew was concerning. Yet what choice did she have? The nearest town was 40 miles away, and she couldn't make that journey on foot with an infant, and if the people there had heard about her disgrace, she might face the same rejection. Why would you do this for us? She asked finally. Yates shifted his weight, looking down at the hat in his hands. My mother found herself in a similar situation many years ago. She wasn't fortunate enough to find a sympathetic soul. I like to think she'd approve of me helping you now. There was a sincerity in his voice that Lily couldn't dismiss, and beyond that, there was the practical reality of her situation. I accept your offer, Mr. Hawkins, she said finally. We'll be ready at first light. Yates nodded, replacing his hat. I'll come for you at dawn. Try to rest, Miss Forrester. We have a long road ahead. As promised, Yates arrived just as the first hints of sunlight began to illuminate the eastern sky. He drove a modest wagon pulled by 2 sturdy horses, with his own mount, a magnificent chestnut stallion tethered behind. Lily was waiting on the porch with Emma in her arms and 2 small trunks containing everything they now owned in the world. Good morning, Miss Forrester, Yates said, jumping down from the wagon to help with her belongings. You're traveling light, that's good. Necessity rather than virtue, I'm afraid, Lily replied, watching as he effortlessly loaded her trunks into the wagon. I've prepared a comfortable spot for you and the little one, he said, gesturing to the wagon bed where he'd arranged blankets and pillows to create a nest of sorts. The road will be rough in places, but this should help. Lily was touched by his thoughtfulness. Thank you. As Yates helped her into the wagon, Emma began to stir, her tiny face scrunching up as she prepared to cry. Lily quickly adjusted her position, rocking the infant gently. She's got a good set of lungs, Yates observed with a hint of a smile. That'll serve her well out west. She's strong, Lily agreed, feeling a surge of fierce pride. She's had to be. They set off as the sun crested the horizon, leaving Shafter behind without ceremony. Lily didn't look back. There was nothing there for her anymore, only judgment and rejection. As they traveled, Yates proved to be a considerate companion. He kept a respectful distance when Lily needed to nurse Emma, finding tasks to occupy himself while giving her privacy. During rest stops, he helped set up a small camp, ensuring Lily and Emma were comfortable before tending to the horses or preparing simple meals. On the 3rd night, as they sat beside a small fire under a vast canopy of stars, Lily finally found the courage to ask the question that had been weighing on her mind. Mr. Hawkins, she began, her voice quiet so as not to disturb the sleeping Emma, you never asked about Emma's father. Yates poked at the fire with a stick. Figured that was your business, not mine. Everyone else in Shafter seemed to think it was their business. I ain't from Shafter, he said simply. And in my experience, there's usually more to stories like yours than town gossips ever know. Lily was silent for a long moment, watching the flames dance. His name was Robert Caldwell. He was passing through Shafter last year, said he was a businessman from St. Louis. He was charming, educated, everything the men in Shafter weren't. We courted for 2 months and he promised to marry me before he left. Said he'd send for me once he'd settled his affairs back east. Yates remained quiet, giving her space to continue. I believed him, Lily said, her voice tinged with bitterness. When I discovered I was expecting, I wrote to the address he'd given me. The letter came back marked no such person. That's when I realized there probably never was a Robert Caldwell from St. Louis. I'm sorry, Yates said softly. That was a cruel deception. Lily nodded, surprised at how much lighter she felt having shared the truth. The worst part wasn't even the abandonment. It was how quickly everyone in town turned on me. Women who had been friendly for years suddenly wouldn't meet my eyes. Men who'd never shown the slightest interest in me before started making indecent suggestions, as if my situation meant I had no standards or self-respect. Some folks are quick to judge what they don't understand, Yates observed, or what they fear could happen to them. Lily looked at him curiously. What do you mean? Many of those judging you most harshly are probably one mistake away from being in similar circumstances. It's easier to point fingers than to acknowledge that vulnerability. His insight surprised her. There was more depth to Yates Hawkins than his rough exterior suggested. What about you, Mr. Hawkins? You mentioned your mother's situation. Were you raised by her alone? A shadow crossed his face. For a time. She worked as a laundress in a mining town in California. Hard life, but she made it work. When I was 8, she married a man who turned out to be unkind. By 12, I was on my own. I'm sorry, Lily said, understanding now why he might empathize with her situation. That must have been terribly difficult. Made me who I am, he said with a shrug, though the set of his jaw suggested the memories still pained him. Taught me not to judge others too hastily. They fell into a companionable silence, each lost in their own thoughts as the fire burned low. For the first time since learning of her banishment, Lily felt a glimmer of hope for the future. Whatever awaited them in Hope Valley, at least they had found one decent man in a world that had shown them little kindness. The journey north was arduous, particularly with an infant. The spring weather was unpredictable, scorching sun giving way to sudden thunderstorms that turned the trails to mud. Yates adjusted their route several times to avoid the worst conditions, always prioritizing Lily and Emma's comfort over making good time. One afternoon, about a week into their journey, they encountered a swollen creek that had washed out the bridge they'd planned to cross. We'll need to find another way around, Yates said, surveying the rushing water with concern. This is too dangerous to ford with the wagon. How long will that take? Lily asked, concerned. Their supplies were running low and Emma had been fussy all morning. A day, maybe 2, he admitted. There's a trading post about 10 miles east. We can resupply there and ask about alternative routes. As they changed direction, the sky darkened ominously. Within an hour, they were caught in a deluge that forced them to seek immediate shelter. Yates spotted a small cave in a hillside and guided the horses toward it. Wait here, he instructed Lily, jumping down from the wagon. He disappeared into the cave briefly before returning. It's dry inside and goes back far enough to bring the wagon in out of the rain. They maneuvered the wagon into the cave's entrance, and Yates quickly set about making a fire to ward off the damp chill. Emma, disturbed by all the commotion, began to wail loudly. I'm sorry, Lily said, trying to soothe her. She's overtired and probably hungry. Nothing to be sorry for, Yates assured her. Babies cry, it's how they tell us what they need. Once the fire was going, he stepped outside to check on the horses, giving Lily privacy to nurse Emma. When he returned, soaked to the skin, Lily had managed to calm the baby who was now sleeping peacefully. "The storm's getting worse," he reported, removing his dripping coat. "We'll need to stay put until it passes." Lily nodded, watching as he hung his coat near the fire to dry. "Mr. Hawkins, may I ask you something?" "Yates," he said. "After a week on the trail together, I think we can dispense with formalities, and yes, you may ask me anything." "Yates, then," she agreed with a small smile. "Why were you in Shafter? You don't seem the type to settle in a place like that." He sat down across the fire from her, running a hand through his damp hair. "I was delivering a message to the sheriff there, professional courtesy between lawmen." "You're a lawman?" Lily asked, surprised. "Former deputy marshal," he confirmed. "These days I mostly work as a guide and tracker, less politics, more fresh air." "And what really brings you to Colorado?" she pressed, sensing there was more to his story. Yates considered her for a moment before answering. "I have a friend who settled in Hope Valley a few years back. He's been trying to convince me to join him in a horse breeding venture. Finally decided to take him up on it." "Is that why you were so willing to help us?" "Because you were headed there anyway." "Partly," he admitted. "But I would have found a way to help you regardless. No one deserves to be cast out the way you were." Lily studied his face in the firelight. There was a steadiness to him that she found reassuring, a quality she hadn't recognized in Robert Caldwell until it was too late. "I've been thinking," Yates continued after a moment. "Hope Valley is still a growing settlement. They'll need a skilled seamstress." "How did you know I was a seamstress?" Lily asked, surprised. "Noticed your hands," he said simply. "You have the calluses of someone who works with needle and thread regularly, and I saw some of the baby clothes you packed finer work than most store-bought items." Lily looked down at her hands, touched that he'd been observant enough to notice such a detail. "Yes, I worked as a seamstress in Shafter. It wasn't much, but it was enough to support us." "It'll be more than enough in Hope Valley," Yates assured her. "New families arriving every month, and the nearest proper store is 30 miles away." The idea of being able to support herself and Emma independently gave Lily a renewed sense of purpose. Perhaps this forced departure would prove to be a blessing in disguise. The storm continued through the night, the sound of rain drumming on the earth outside their shelter. Lily slept fitfully, waking often to check on Emma. During one such awakening, she found Yates still awake, staring into the dying embers of their fire. "You should rest," she said softly. "I can keep watch for a while," he smiled faintly. "Old habits, never could sleep soundly on the trail. It must be a lonely life," Lily observed. "It has been," he acknowledged. "But it suits me, or it did until recently." "What changed?" Yates added another small branch to the fire, watching as it caught and flared. "Getting older, I suppose. Starting to think about what comes next. A man can only wander for so long before he starts yearning for something permanent." There was something in his voice of vulnerability, perhaps, that made Lily see him differently. Not just as her rescuer or guide, but as a man with his own hopes and uncertainties. "I hope you find what you're looking for in Hope Valley," she said sincerely. His eyes met hers across the fire. "I have a feeling I might." The moment stretched between them, charged with something Lily wasn't ready to name. Then Emma stirred, breaking the spell, and Lily turned her attention to her daughter. When she looked up again, Yates had moved to the cave entrance and was watching the rain, his expression unreadable in the darkness. The storm passed by morning, but it left the trails muddy and treacherous. Yates suggested they remain at the cave for another day to allow the ground to dry, and Lily readily agreed, grateful for the opportunity to properly rest and wash their clothes in the rain-filled barrels on the wagon. As they prepared a simple breakfast, Yates seemed more reserved than usual, and Lily wondered if he regretted the moment of openness they'd shared in the night. "Is something troubling you?" she finally asked as they sat eating. Yates hesitated. "Been thinking about what lies ahead." "Hope Valley is a good place, but it'll still have its challenges." "What sort of challenges?" "It's a mining settlement originally, though it's diversified some in recent years. Still rough around the edges in places. And while it's more accepting than Shafter, you'll still be a woman alone with a child, Some will make assumptions. Lily sighed. I'm accustomed to assumptions, Mr. Yates. I can handle whatever whispers come my way. I don't doubt that, he said, his expression softening. You're clearly a woman of considerable strength. I just want you to be prepared. I appreciate your concern, Lily said. Truly, but I've survived worse than gossip. Yates nodded, seemingly satisfied with her resolve. There's something else I've been considering, he said after a moment. A proposition of sorts. Lily tensed immediately. Despite their developing trust, she couldn't help but be wary of propositions from men. Noting her reaction, Yates quickly continued, Nothing improper, I assure you. It's just when we arrive in Hope Valley, it might be easier for you to establish yourself if you had a connection to someone already respected in the community. What sort of connection? Lily asked cautiously. My friend Daniel, the one I'm joining in the horse business, his wife Sarah is active in the community. If I were to introduce you as a friend under my protection, it would smooth your way considerably. Under your protection, Lily repeated, unsure what he was suggesting. Yates ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling to articulate his thoughts. What I mean to say is, arriving together as companions would prevent certain assumptions and questions that might otherwise arise. Understanding dawned on Lily. You're suggesting we pretend to be a couple. Nothing so formal, he said quickly. Just allowing people to draw their own conclusions for a time. It would give you a chance to establish yourself on your own merits without immediately facing the same prejudice you encountered in Shafter. Lily considered his proposal. There was a practical logic to it, but something about the deception troubled her. I've had enough of lies, Yates, even well-intentioned ones. I understand, he said, his expression grave. It was merely a thought. We'll proceed however you're most comfortable. His immediate acceptance of her refusal, without argument or attempt to persuade, only increased Lily's respect for him. It was such a stark contrast to her experience with Robert, who had always had a counter to any concern she raised, always a reason why she should defer to his judgment. Thank you for understanding, she said, and for the offer. It was kindly meant, I know. The tension between them eased, and they spent the rest of the day in companionable activity, Lily tending to Emma and mending some of their clothes that had been damaged on the journey, while Yates repaired a broken wheel spoke and hunted, returning with 2 rabbits for their dinner. As the days passed, they fell into a rhythm of travel and rest that felt almost domestic. Yates would hunt or fish when supplies ran low, and Lily would prepare their meals. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, talking until the stars were thick overhead. She learned about his years as a deputy marshal, the scrapes he'd gotten into and out of, the people he'd met along the way. In turn, she told him about growing up in Mississippi, losing her mother to fever when she was 16, and her decision to head west after her father's remarriage to a woman who made it clear Lily was no longer welcome in their home. These conversations, more than anything, began to heal something in Lily that had been broken by Robert's betrayal and the town's rejection. In Yates, she found not just protection but genuine respect, something she'd almost forgotten could exist between a man and a woman. 2 weeks into their journey, they encountered their first real trouble. They were crossing a stretch of open prairie when Yates suddenly reined in the horses, his posture alert. "What is it?" Lily asked, immediately checking on Emma, who was sleeping in her basket. "Riders," Yates said grimly, pointing to a dust cloud on the horizon. 6, maybe 7, coming fast. Is that unusual out here? Yes, he reached for the rifle stored under the wagon seat. Could be nothing, could be trouble, best to be prepared. Lily felt fear constrict her throat as she watched the riders approach. They were still too distant to make out clearly, but there was something about their speed and formation that suggested purpose rather than casual travel. "If anything happens," Yates said quietly, "take Emma and head for those trees we passed about a half-mile back. Don't stop, don't look back." "I'm not leaving you," Lily protested. You will if it means keeping your daughter safe, he replied firmly, his eyes still on the approaching riders. Promise me, Lily? It was the first time he had used her given name, and the gravity with which he said it convinced her of the potential danger. I promise. As the riders drew nearer, Yates visibly relaxed. I know them, he said, lowering his rifle slightly. Pinkerton men. I've worked with the leader before. Still, he remained watchful as the group approached, and Lily noted that he kept his hand near his sidearm even as he raised the other in greeting. Hawkins, the lead rider called as they drew close. Thought that might be you, Morrison, Yates acknowledged. You're a long way from Denver. The man called Morrison, a burly figure with a thick mustache, glanced at Lily and Emma before returning his attention to Yates. On the trail of the Delaney brothers, robbed a bank in Wichita last month. You seen any sign of them? Can't say that I have, Yates replied. We've been keeping to ourselves, headed north. Morrison nodded, his eyes drifting to Lily again with undisguised curiosity. Lily met his gaze steadily, refusing to appear intimidated. Your wife? Morrison asked bluntly. Before Yates could respond, one of the other men laughed. Since when does Hawkins have a wife? More likely he's escorting her somewhere for a fee. Lily felt her cheeks burn at the implication, but Yates's expression hardened dangerously. You do well to mind your manners, Jackson, he said, his voice deceptively calm. Miss Forrester is a lady deserving of your respect. The man called Jackson smirked but fell silent under Morrison's warning glance. Apologies for my associate's poor manners, madam, Morrison said to Lily. We've been on the trail too long. He turned back to Yates. If you do happen across the Delaney brothers, there's a substantial reward, $500 dead or alive. I'll keep that in mind, Yates said, though I'm out of that line of work these days. Morrison raised an eyebrow. So I see. Well, good luck to you both. Safe travels. With a tip of his hat, he led his men away, continuing south at a brisk pace. Lily released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Are they dangerous? She asked once they were well out of earshot. Pinkertons. They can be, Yates admitted. But they generally stick to their assignments. It's the Delaney brothers we should worry about if they're in the area. Would you have told them if you'd seen these brothers? Lily asked, curious about this glimpse into Yates's former life. He considered the question carefully. Depends. The Delaneys are bad men who have hurt innocent people. If turning them in meant they'd face justice, yes, but Pinkertons don't always concern themselves with proper justice. His answer revealed a nuanced moral code that intrigued Lily. Here was a man who clearly respected the law but didn't follow it blindly, who made his own judgments about right and wrong. You didn't correct them, she observed. About me being your wife. Yates glanced at her, then back to the trail ahead. Didn't seem necessary to explain our arrangement to men like that. Would have invited more questions than answers. Lily nodded, understanding his logic. Yet she couldn't help but notice how easily the assumption had been made that she and Yates belonged together. And more surprisingly, how little the idea troubled her. That evening, as they made camp beside a small creek, Lily found herself watching Yates more closely than usual. The encounter with the Pinkertons had revealed a side of him she hadn't fully appreciated before the quiet authority, the implicit threat of violence held in check by rigid self-control. It was a reminder that for all his gentleness with her and Emma, he was a man accustomed to dangerous situations and hard decisions. Something on your mind? Yates asked, catching her gaze as he built their fire. Lily hesitated, then decided on honesty. I was just thinking that there's more to you than meets the eye, Yates Hawkins. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Could say the same about you, Lily Forrester. Me, I'm an open book, she protested. Are you? He challenged gently. A young woman who left Mississippi for Texas on her own, who built a life from nothing, who faced public shame without breaking. There's steel in you that most men I've known would envy. His assessment left her momentarily speechless. No one had ever seen her that way before, as strong rather than stubborn, resilient rather than rebellious. I've had to be strong, she said finally. "I haven't had the luxury of weakness." "That's just it," Yates replied, settling beside the now blazing fire. "Most people faced with what you've endured would have broken, or compromised, or become bitter. You've done none of those things." "How can you be so sure?" Lily asked. "You've known me less than a month." "I've spent most of my life reading people," he said simply. "Had to in my line of work. Survival depended on it, and what I see in you is remarkable." The sincerity in his voice warmed Lily more than the fire before them. For so long, she'd seen herself through the eyes of others, who found her lacking her father, who viewed her independence as defiance, the townspeople of Shafter who saw only her transgression, Robert who had seen her as naive enough to exploit. To be truly seen and admired for the very qualities others had condemned was a novel and heady experience. "Thank you," she said softly, unable to articulate the full depth of what his words meant to her. Yates nodded, seeming to understand what remained unspoken. They sat in companionable silence as darkness settled fully around them, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and Emma's occasional soft snuffles from her basket. "We should reach Hope Valley within the week," Yates said eventually. "The worst of the journey is behind us." "I almost find myself reluctant for it to end," Lily admitted. "Despite the hardships, there's been a freedom to this time on the trail." "No prying eyes or wagging tongues," Yates agreed. "Just open sky and honest work." "Exactly." Lily smiled, pleased that he understood. "Though I suppose Emma deserves a proper roof over her head and regular meals." "She does," Yates said, glancing fondly at the sleeping infant. "And so do you." There was something in his tone, a note of protectiveness, perhaps, or something deeper that made Lily's heart beat a little faster. She was suddenly acutely aware of him as a man, not just as her protector or guide. The firelight cast his strong features into dramatic relief, highlighting the square line of his jaw, the intensity of his eyes as they met hers across the flames. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. Then Emma stirred and began to fuss, breaking the spell. "She's probably hungry," Lily said, grateful for the distraction from her confusing thoughts. Yates immediately stood. "I'll check on the horses, give you some privacy." As he walked away, Lily took a steadying breath. She was being foolish. Yates had shown her nothing but respect and kindness, and here she was reading romantic intentions into simple decency. After Robert's betrayal, she'd sworn to guard her heart more carefully. The last thing she needed was to develop feelings for a man whose life was as unsettled as her own. Yet as she nursed Emma, soothed by the infant's contented sounds, Lily couldn't help but wonder what it might be like to build a life with someone like Yates Hawkins, someone steadfast and honorable, who saw her strength rather than her mistakes. Such thoughts were dangerous, she reminded herself firmly. For now, she needed to focus on what awaited them in Hope Valley, on establishing a new beginning for herself and Emma. Whatever else might develop would have to wait. The following days brought them into increasingly mountainous terrain as they approached Colorado territory. The air grew cooler, the vegetation changed, and Lily found herself entranced by the majestic scenery that unfolded around them. Towering peaks, their summits still snow-capped even in late spring, dominated the horizon. Forests of pine and aspen created a patchwork of green and gold on the mountain slopes. "It's breathtaking," she commented as they paused on a ridge overlooking a vast valley below. "So different from Texas." "Wait until you see it in autumn," Yates said. "The aspens turn a gold so bright it looks like the mountains are on fire." "You've spent time here before?" Lily asked. Yates nodded. "Tracked a fugitive through these mountains a few years back. Dangerous work, but I fell in love with the country. That's when I first visited Hope Valley and met Daniel." "Tell me more about Hope Valley," Lily requested. "What should I expect? It started as a mining settlement about 15 years ago," Yates explained. "Silver mainly. But unlike most boom towns, it didn't die when the richest veins played out. The location was two good fertile valley, protected from the worst winter storms, plenty of water and timber. Folks started farming, raising livestock. Now it's a proper town with about 500 residents. And they're truly more accepting of situations like mine. Yates considered the question carefully. The West attracts people seeking second chances. Many in Hope Valley have stories they'd rather leave behind. That creates a certain tolerance for others' circumstances. He glanced at her. I won't pretend there won't be some who judge, but they'll be the minority. Lily nodded, grateful for his honesty. And housing. Will we be able to find somewhere to stay immediately? Daniel and Sarah have offered their guest cabin until you get settled, Yates said. It's small but comfortable. Should give you time to find something more permanent and establish your dressmaking business. That's very generous of them, Lily said, touched by the kindness of people she hadn't even met. I hope I can repay them someday. Sarah's expecting their third child, Yates mentioned. I expect your skills as a seamstress will be more than welcome. As they continued their journey, Lily found herself growing both excited and anxious about their arrival in Hope Valley. While the promise of a fresh start was appealing, the idea of establishing herself in yet another new community was daunting. And then, there was the uncertainty about her relationship with Yates once they reached their destination. Would he remain a part of her life? Or would their paths diverge once his obligation to deliver her safely was fulfilled? The question weighed on her mind, but she hesitated to broach it directly. Instead, she focused on practical matters: how she would set up her business, what supplies she would need, how she would manage caring for Emma while working. On their final night before reaching Hope Valley, they camped on a small plateau that offered a spectacular view of the sunset. Emma was particularly content that evening, cooing and smiling as Lily bounced her on her knee. She's growing stronger every day, Yates observed as he prepared their evening meal. Going to be as determined as her mother, I'd wager. Heaven help us all, Lily laughed. One stubborn Forrester woman is probably enough for any community. I don't know about that, Yates replied, his eyes meeting hers with unexpected warmth. The world could use more women with your spirit. The compliment brought a flush to Lily's cheeks. You've been very kind to us, Yates. I don't know how I'll ever repay you for what you've done. There's nothing to repay, he said firmly. Helping you and Emma has been. He paused, searching for the right words. It's been one of the most worthwhile things I've done in a long time. Something in his voice, a hint of emotion carefully controlled, made Lily's heart skip. Before she could respond, however, Yates changed the subject. We should reach Hope Valley by midday tomorrow. There's a creek that runs along the northern edge of town. We'll follow it down from the highlands. Lily nodded, allowing the moment to pass, though the look they'd shared lingered in her mind as they finished their meal and prepared for sleep. That night, as she lay awake watching the stars wheel overhead, Lily allowed herself to acknowledge what she'd been trying to deny for days. Somewhere along this journey, amid the hardships and moments of unexpected joy, she had begun to develop feelings for Yates Hawkins. Not just gratitude or respect, but something deeper: an attraction to his quiet strength, his unwavering integrity, his gentle way with Emma. It was too soon, she told herself firmly. Too complicated. She had Emma to think of, a business to establish, a life to rebuild. And Yates had his own plans, his partnership with Daniel to pursue. Getting emotionally entangled now would only complicate matters for both of them. Yet as sleep finally claimed her, Lily's dreams were filled with images of a future she hadn't dared to imagine: a home filled with laughter. Emma growing strong under the watchful eyes of both her mother and the man who had rescued them from despair. Hope Valley came into view shortly after noon the following day, just as Yates had predicted. The settlement nestled in a broad valley surrounded by forested mountains, with a creek winding through its center. From their vantage point on a ridge above the town, Lily could see neat rows of buildings along a main street, outlying farms and ranches dotting the surrounding landscape, and the silver glint of a small lake to the east. It's larger than I expected, she commented, taking in the scene below. Grown considerably in the last few years, Yates confirmed. That's the main street. There has the general store, hotel, a Sayer's office, and such. The church is that white building to the north. Daniel's horse ranch is about a mile outside town to the west. As they descended into the valley, Lily felt a curious mixture of hope and trepidation. This place would become their home, for better or worse. While Shafter had ultimately rejected them, she couldn't help but wonder if Hope Valley would truly live up to its name. The town itself was bustling with activity as they drove down the main street. Several people called out greetings to Yates, who responded with friendly nods and waves. Lily was acutely aware of the curious glances directed her way, but they seemed more interested than judgmental. Hawkins. "You finally made it," a booming voice called out as they approached the general store. A tall, broad-shouldered man with a shock of red hair and a neatly trimmed beard stepped into the street, a wide grin splitting his face. This, Lily guessed, must be Daniel. "Right on schedule," Yates replied, pulling the wagon to a stop. The two men clasped hands warmly. "Daniel, I'd like you to meet Miss Lily Forrester and her daughter, Emma." Daniel's friendly gaze turned to Lily. "Miss Forrester, welcome to Hope Valley." Yates mentioned in his letter that he was escorting a friend north. "Any friend of his is welcome here." "Thank you, mister." Lily trailed off, realizing she didn't know his surname, Brennan, "but please call me Daniel. My wife Sarah is eager to meet you both. She's at home preparing the guest cabin for you." "That's very kind of you," Lily said, touched by the warm welcome. "It's the least we can do," Daniel assured her. "Yates tells me you're a talented seamstress. Sarah's been lamenting the lack of proper dressmaking services in town since Mrs. Patterson moved to Denver last year." "I would be happy to help however I can," Lily replied, already feeling more at ease. Perhaps Yates had been right about Hope Valley after all. Daniel insisted they come directly to the ranch, promising to show Yates the new breeding stock he'd acquired and help Lily get settled in the guest cabin. As they drove the short distance to the Brennan Ranch, Lily found herself relaxing. The welcoming attitude they'd encountered so far was a stark contrast to the judgment she'd faced in Shafter. The Brennan Ranch was impressive, a large main house of hewn logs, several well-maintained outbuildings, and extensive corrals containing some of the finest horses Lily had ever seen. A woman with honey blonde hair piled atop her head stepped onto the porch as they approached, a young boy and girl at her side. "Sarah," Daniel called as he dismounted from his horse, which he'd ridden alongside their wagon. "Our guests have arrived." Sarah Brennan proved to be as warm and welcoming as her husband. Her pregnancy was evident beneath her practical dress, but she moved with energy and purpose as she greeted Yates with a familial hug and turned to Lily with genuine interest. "Miss Forrester, I'm so pleased to meet you," she said, her smile reaching her clear blue eyes. "And this must be Emma. Oh, what a beautiful child." Emma, who had been remarkably well behaved throughout their arrival, rewarded Sarah's admiration with a toothless grin. "She likes you," Lily observed, touched by the woman's easy acceptance. "I have a way with children," Sarah replied with a wink. "These two rascals are mine. Joshua is 7 and Mary is 5. The children regarded Lily with shy curiosity before their father sent them to help the ranch hand unload Yates's horse. "We've prepared the guest cabin for you," Sarah continued. "It's just beyond that stand of aspens. Not large, but it should be comfortable for you and Emma while you decide on more permanent arrangements." "I can't thank you enough for your hospitality," Lily said sincerely. "Nonsense. Any friend of Yates is family as far as we're concerned. Now let's get you settled. You must be exhausted after such a journey." As Sarah led Lily toward the guest cabin, Lily glanced back to see Yates and Daniel deep in conversation, their heads bent together as they examined one of the horses in a nearby corral. Yates looked more relaxed than she'd seen him throughout their journey, clearly at ease in this place among friends. The guest cabin proved to be a charming structure, a single room with a small kitchen area, a curtained-off sleeping space, and a sturdy cradle that Sarah explained had belonged to both her children. "It's perfect," Lily said, genuinely impressed by the cozy space. "Far more than I expected." "The men will bring your trunks shortly," Sarah assured her. "In the meantime, why don't you freshen up? There's water heating on the stove and I've laid out fresh towels. When you're ready, come to the main house for supper. We're celebrating your arrival." Left alone with Emma, Lily took a moment to simply breathe, to absorb the reality that they had reached safety. After weeks of travel and months of uncertainty before that, they had found a place that already felt more welcoming than Shafter ever had. As promised, Yates and Daniel delivered her trunks a short while later. While Daniel excused himself almost immediately, Yates lingered, his expression uncharacteristically uncertain. "Everything to your liking?" he asked, glancing around the cabin. "It's wonderful," Lily assured him. "The Brennans are incredibly generous. They're good people," Yates agreed. "Sarah's already planning to introduce you to half the town as the answer to their dressmaking prayers." Lily laughed. "I hope I can live up to her expectations." A brief silence fell between them, laden with unspoken questions about what would happen next. Their journey was over, the immediate crisis resolved. What would their relationship be now? "Yates," Lily began hesitantly, "I want to thank you properly for everything you've done for us." "I know you said there's no debt, but I feel there isn't," he interrupted gently. "Bringing you and Emma here has been." He paused, seeming to struggle with his words. "It's meant more to me than I can easily express." Something in his voice made Lily's pulse quicken. "What happens now?" she asked softly. Yates met her gaze directly. "That depends on what you want, Lily. Daniel has offered me a partnership in his horse breeding business, as I mentioned. I plan to accept. That means I'll be staying in Hope Valley." "I'm glad," Lily said, surprised by the strength of her relief at this news. "Emma and I will be staying too, of course. It seems like a good place to make a fresh start." "It is," Yates agreed. He took a step closer, his expression serious. "Lily, I want to be clear about something. I hope we can remain friends at the very least, but I would understand if you prefer to establish yourself independently." Lily studied his face, reading the careful restraint there, the effort it was taking him not to presume. "I would like us to remain friends," she said carefully. "Very much. Beyond that, I think perhaps we should give ourselves time. There's been so much change so quickly." Relief flooded his features. "Time is something we have plenty of now," he said. "No more rushing to outrun storms or reach the next campsite before dark." "No more sleeping on the hard ground," Lily added with a smile. "Though I might miss our fireside conversations," Yates admitted. "We can still have those," Lily suggested, "just with more comfortable seating." Yates laughed and the tension between them eased. "I should let you rest before dinner. Sarah's a fine cook, but her portion sizes can be overwhelming. You'll need your strength." As he turned to leave, Lily impulsively reached out to touch his arm. "Yates, thank you. Not just for bringing us here, but for showing me that there are still good men in this world. After Robert, I wasn't sure I believed that anymore." Yates covered her hand with his own, his expression solemn. "There are good people everywhere, Lily. Sometimes they're just harder to find." With that, he departed, leaving Lily to prepare herself and Emma for their first dinner in their new community. The weeks that followed brought a whirlwind of changes as Lily established herself in Hope Valley. True to Sarah's prediction, word of Lily's sewing skills spread quickly through the community. Within days, she had more orders for clothing alterations and new garments than she could reasonably handle, forcing her to establish a waiting list and proper business hours. The town's reception of her and Emma had been remarkably accepting. While there were a few raised eyebrows and whispered comments about her unmarried status, the majority of Hope Valley's residents seemed more interested in her abilities with a needle and thread than in her personal history. It helped that the Brennans had so publicly welcomed her, and that Yates, who, she discovered, was held in high regard, locally clearly considered her a friend. Lily and Emma remained in the guest cabin for a month while Lily saved her earnings. With Daniel's help, she eventually secured a small cottage on the edge of town that included a front room perfect for conducting her business. The day they moved in, half a dozen townspeople appeared to help, bringing furniture, household items, and food to stock her pantry. Throughout this period of transition, Yates remained a steady presence in their lives. Though busy with his new partnership at the ranch, he made time to visit regularly, often bringing small gifts: a wooden toy for Emma, fabric remnants he'd found at the general store, wildflowers from the hills. He never imposed or presumed, always careful to respect the boundaries Lily had established. Yet his interest was clear in the way his eyes followed her, in his attentiveness to her needs and concerns. By midsummer, Emma was crawling energetically, her personality blossoming in their stable new environment. Lily's business was thriving, with customers coming from as far as 20 miles away for her services. And her feelings for Yates had only deepened as she watched him build his own new life in Hope Valley, respected by the men, beloved by the children he always had time for, steadfast in his integrity. One warm August evening, Lily sat on the small porch of her cottage, enjoying the cool breeze after a day of sewing. Emma had been put to bed, and Lily was taking a rare moment of solitude with a cup of tea when she heard the familiar sound of Yates's horse approaching. "Evening," he called softly as he dismounted. "Hope I'm not intruding." "Never," Lily assured him, gesturing to the second chair on her porch. "Tea, please." As Yates settled beside her, Lily noticed he seemed somewhat tense, unusual for him these days. "Is everything all right at the ranch?" she asked. "Fine," he assured her. "Daniel's negotiating the purchase of a new stallion from a breeder in California. Should arrive next month if all goes well." "That's wonderful," Lily said, though she sensed there was something more on his mind. They sat in companionable silence for a few moments, watching as the sun dipped lower on the horizon, painting the mountains in shades of gold and purple. "I received a letter today," Yates finally said. "From an old colleague in the marshal's office. They're offering me my badge back." "Senior position in Denver." Lily felt her heart sink. "Oh, that's quite an honor." "It is," Yates agreed. "Good pay, respected position, the kind of offer I would have jumped at a year ago. Will you take it?" Lily asked, trying to keep her voice neutral despite the sudden tightness in her throat. Yates turned to face her directly. "That depends." "On what?" "On you, Lily." His voice was low, earnest. "On whether there might be a reason for me to stay in Hope Valley beyond horses and old friendships." Lily's pulse quickened at the implication of his words. "Yates, let me speak plainly," he interrupted gently. "These past months, watching you build a life here, seeing your strength and determination, the way you care for Emma, the kindness you show to everyone you meet, it's only confirmed what I began to feel on our journey here." He reached out, hesitantly taking her hand in his. "I've fallen in love with you, Lily Forrester, and with Emma too. I know it might be too soon, that you might not feel the same, but I needed you to know before I made any decision about Denver." Lily found herself momentarily speechless, overwhelmed by the emotions his declaration stirred. Part of her had known this was coming, had perhaps even hoped for it, but having the words spoken aloud made them real in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. "Yates, she began, then faltered, unsure how to articulate the complex mix of feelings in her heart. "You don't need to answer now," he assured her quickly. "I understand this is sudden. I just wanted you to know where I stand, that I see a future here with you and Emma if you're open to the possibility." Lily looked down at their joined hands, then back up to his face, reading the genuine emotion there. "I've been so afraid to trust again," she admitted softly. "After Robert, I promised myself I wouldn't be so easily fooled." "I understand that," Yates said. "And I would never rush you or press for more than you're ready to give." "That's just it," Lily said with a small laugh. "Your patience, your respect, They're part of why I've come to care for you so deeply. You're nothing like Robert, nothing like any man I've known." Hope flickered in Yates's eyes. "So you do have feelings for me?" "Yes," Lily admitted, feeling a weight lift as she finally voiced the truth. "I've tried to be cautious, to focus on establishing our lives here first, but yes, Yates, I've fallen in love with you too. Watching you with Emma, seeing the man you truly are, how could I not?" The smile that spread across his face was radiant. "Then I'll tell Marshal Wilson that while I appreciate the offer, my future lies in Hope Valley." "Are you certain?" Lily asked. "Being a marshal was your life for so long." Yates shook his head. "That was a different life, a solitary one. What I want now is a family, roots, a place to belong, with you and Emma if you'll have me." "I'm not looking for a savior or a provider," Lily said firmly. "I've built a life for us here, and I'm proud of that independence." "As you should be," Yates agreed immediately. "I'm not offering to rescue you, Lily. You've already proven you don't need rescuing. I'm offering partnership, companionship. A chance to build something together that's stronger than what either of us could create alone." His understanding of what was important to her, her hard-won independence, her need to be valued as an equal, confirmed what she already knew in her heart. Yates Hawkins was a rare man indeed. "In that case," Lily said, squeezing his hand, "I think Marshal Wilson is going to be disappointed." Yates laughed softly, relief and joy evident in his expression. "I can live with that." He leaned forward slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Instead, Lily met him halfway, their lips meeting in a kiss that was both tender and full of promise. When they finally parted, Lily felt a certainty she hadn't experienced in years, perhaps ever. This was right. This was where she was meant to be. "I should go," Yates said reluctantly. "It's getting late and you have work tomorrow." "Stay a little longer," Lily requested softly. "The night is too beautiful to end just yet." So they sat together on her porch, hands entwined, watching as stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky above Hope Valley, the place that had truly lived up to its name, offering both of them a second chance at happiness they'd once thought beyond their reach. The courtship that followed was conducted with a blend of traditional propriety and practical acknowledgement of their unique circumstances. Yates was a frequent visitor at Lily's cottage, often bringing dinner after a long day of sewing for her, or taking Emma for walks around town to give Lily a much-needed moment of rest. For her part, Lily found ways to support his work at the ranch, mending his clothes, preparing meals he could take with him on long rides, listening with genuine interest as he shared his plans for the breeding program he and Daniel were developing. Their relationship deepened through these everyday exchanges of care and support, building upon the foundation of respect they'd established during their journey. By autumn, as the aspen trees turned the golden color Yates had once described to her, it seemed natural when he finally asked the question she'd been expecting. They were walking along the creek that ran through town, Emma secure in Yates's arms as she babbled happily at a family of ducks swimming nearby. The afternoon sun cast a warm glow over the landscape, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of pine and wood smoke. "I've been thinking," Yates began, his tone casual though Lily could detect an undercurrent of nervousness. "The winters are harsh up here. It would make sense for us to combine our resources." Lily smiled at his practical approach. "Are you proposing we share firewood, Mr. Hawkins?" He chuckled, shifting Emma to his other arm. "Among other things, I've purchased land at the edge of town, 10 acres with a good building site overlooking the valley. I've engaged Mr. Peterson to start construction on a house next spring." "That sounds lovely," Lily said, her heart beginning to race as she guessed where this conversation was heading. "It would be lovelier with you and Emma there," Yates said, stopping to face her directly. "Lily, I'm not a man of flowery words or grand gestures. But I love you, both of you, with everything I am. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Despite anticipating the question, Lily found herself momentarily speechless, tears welling in her eyes. "Oh dear," Yates said, looking concerned. "I've upset you." "No," Lily assured him quickly, wiping at her eyes with a small laugh. "These are happy tears. Yes, Yates. Yes, I will marry you." Emma, sensing the emotional shift, patted Yates's face with her small hand, drawing laughter from them both. Yates leaned forward to kiss Lily, a gentle press of lips that conveyed all the tenderness and promise of his proposal. "I have something for you," he said, shifting Emma back to Lily's arms so he could reach into his pocket. He withdrew a small box and opened it to reveal a simple gold band set with a modest sapphire. "It was my mother's," he explained. "The one thing of hers I managed to keep all these years." As Lily allowed him to slide the ring onto her finger, she was struck by the symbolism this treasured heirloom from a woman who had faced circumstances similar to her own, now passing to her as a symbol of a future brighter than either of them could have imagined when they first met. "It's beautiful," she whispered, admiring how the deep blue stone caught the autumn light. "I'll treasure it always." They were married 2 weeks later in Hope Valley's small church, with Daniel standing as Yates's best man and Sarah, now mother to a new baby boy, serving as Lily's matron of honor. Emma, dressed in a gown Lily had lovingly crafted from the finest fabric she could obtain, was held by Sarah during the ceremony, her occasional happy squeals bringing smiles to the faces of all in attendance. The entire town turned out for the celebration that followed, a testament to how fully Lily and Emma had been embraced by the community that had become their home. There was music and dancing, an abundance of food, and warm wishes from people who had, in a remarkably short time, become like family. As the evening wound down, Yates led Lily away from the festivities to a quiet spot beneath the stars. Emma had been whisked away by Sarah, who had insisted the newlyweds deserved at least one night to themselves. "Happy?" Yates asked, his arms encircling her waist as they stood looking out over the valley. "More than I ever thought possible," Lily admitted, leaning back against his solid warmth. "If someone had told me a year ago that I would find myself here, loved and accepted, with a thriving business and a husband who respects me as an equal, I would have thought them delusional." Yates chuckled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Life has a way of surprising us. When I rode into Shafter that day, I was just passing through, had no idea I'd find my future there." "Do you ever regret it?" Lily asked, voicing a question that occasionally still troubled her. "Turning down the marshal's position in Denver, that life of adventure and purpose?" "Not for a moment," Yates replied without hesitation. "What I found with you and Emma is worth more than any badge or title. This is the purpose I was meant for, building a life here, a family, something that will last beyond my years." Lily turned in his arms to face him, reaching up to trace the now familiar lines of his face. "I never properly thanked you, you know, for taking us from Shafter that day." "You never needed to," Yates assured her, "though I'm beginning to think I got the better end of that bargain." "How do you figure?" Lily asked, raising an eyebrow in amusement. "Well," he drawled, his hands settling comfortably at her waist, "I set out to escort a young woman and her baby to safety. In return, I got a beautiful wife, a daughter to raise as my own, and a future brighter than anything I dared hope for. Seems like I came out ahead, when you put it that way." Lily laughed, then grew serious. "Emma will know the truth someday about her birth father, about how we came to Hope Valley. I want her to understand where she comes from, but also that family is more than blood. We'll tell her together," Yates promised. "And she'll know that, while she wasn't born of my body, she's always been in my heart. From that very first moment I saw her in your arms on that porch in Shafter." Lily felt tears threaten again at his words. This man, who had no obligation to them, had chosen to love them both so completely. "I believe you," she whispered. "And I thank God every day that you were the one who happened to be passing through Shafter when we needed you most. Not chance," Yates said with quiet conviction. "Providence." As they stood together under the vast Colorado sky, Lily reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The path had been neither straight nor easy, marked by betrayal, judgment, and hardship. Yet it had led them here to love, to acceptance, to a community that valued them for who they were rather than condemning them for past mistakes. Hope Valley had lived up to its name, offering not just refuge but the chance to build something new and beautiful from the ashes of what had been lost. As Yates's lips found hers in a kiss that held all the promise of their future together, Lily silently thanked the town of Shafter for casting her out. Without that painful rejection, she might never have found her way home. 5 years later, the sound of laughter drew Lily's attention to the front window of their home. Outside, Yates was teaching Emma, now 5 years old, how to brush down his stallion, Storm. The girl's dark curls bounced as she reached up on tiptoes, her small face serious with concentration as she attempted to mimic her father's methodical strokes. Nearby, their 3-year-old son, Michael, was gleefully splashing in a puddle from yesterday's rain, oblivious to the mud coating his overalls. Lily placed a hand on her swollen belly, feeling the strong kicks of the child who would join their family in just a few more months. Doctor. Wilson suspected it might be twins this time, given how much larger she was carrying than with her previous pregnancies. The thought both thrilled and intimidated her, but she knew that whatever challenges came, they would face them together. The home Yates had built for them had expanded over the years to accommodate their growing family. The original structure now boasted additional bedrooms, a larger kitchen, and a dedicated space for Lily's dressmaking business, which continued to thrive. Though she worked fewer hours now, focusing primarily on special orders like wedding gowns and christening dresses, her reputation had spread throughout the county and beyond. Yates and Daniel's horse breeding venture had proven equally successful. Their stock was now sought after by buyers from as far away as California and Texas, known for strength, intelligence, and reliable temperaments. The partnership had made both men financially secure while allowing them to pursue work they genuinely loved. More important than their material success, however, was the community they had built around themselves. The Brennans remained their closest friends, their children growing up together like cousins. New families continued to settle in Hope Valley, drawn by its reputation for tolerance and opportunity. And Lily took particular satisfaction in welcoming those who, like herself, came seeking second chances. She watched as Yates lifted Emma onto Storm's back, holding her securely while letting her experience the thrill of sitting astride the massive animal. The girl's face lit up with delight, and Lily felt her heart swell with love for them both. Emma had Yates's mannerisms, now his thoughtful pauses before speaking, his habit of tilting her head when considering a problem. Though not his by blood, she was his daughter in all the ways that truly mattered. Lily often thought about the cruel twist of fate that had led to their banishment from Shafter. What had seemed like the end of her world had, in fact, been the beginning of something far better than she could have imagined. The painful rejection had led her to Yates, to Hope Valley, to a life filled with love and purpose. Last year, they had received word that Shafter had been largely abandoned after the railroad chose a different route, bypassing the town entirely. The businesses had failed, the people had moved on, and what remained was little more than a ghost town, a footnote in the history of the Texas frontier. Lily had felt no satisfaction at the news, only a quiet recognition of life's unpredictable paths. Emma spotted her watching through the window and waved excitedly. "Mama, look at me, I'm riding Storm," Lily waved back, smiling at her daughter's joy. Yates looked up too, his eyes meeting Lily's across the distance, filled with the same love and devotion that had been there since the day he'd proposed by the creek. As she stepped outside to join her family in the golden afternoon sunlight, Lily reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The road from Shafter to Hope Valley had been long and uncertain, marked by both hardship and unexpected blessings. Yet she wouldn't change a single step of that journey, for it had led her home not to a place, but to the people who had become her world. The town had banished her for having a baby out of wedlock, and a cowboy had ridden her to a place that welcomed her. But the true gift had been finding not just acceptance, but belonging, a love that saw her as she truly was and cherished her for it, a community that valued contribution over conformity, and the chance to build a life defined not by past mistakes, but by present joy and future promise. As Yates wrapped an arm around her waist, drawing her close against his side while they watched their children play, Lily knew with absolute certainty that this family, this love, this life they had created together was worth every tear shed, every judgment endured, every mile traveled. This was where she was always meant to be.